Hey guys, so today I'm going to go into more of a marketing focused topic. I'm going to be covering how to create engagement plans with Sitecore. Um, this is just a kind of an easy tutorial I'm going to do. I'm not going to go into some of the implications and connecting points of engagement plans. So I'm going to kind of show a engagement plan, a kind of a linear engagement plan of how to create it. But there's a lot of connection points where data could come into this engagement plan, or you know I'm assuming a user might go into the initial state, but there's situations where somebody could skip and go right to the final state of the engagement plan, for example. So to get started, you will log into Sitecore, and in this interface, there is this whole marketing applications section. Underneath that, there is a marketing control panel. So I'll go ahead and click on that option. And then you'll see a bunch of different options. I've already gone ahead and created some goals just to show how you could create goals and then have either web forms for marketers or some other custom explicit form of marketing to trigger the goals and then to trigger the engagement plan states. So, um, like I said, these are explicit ways I'm going to show, but there are implicit ways that you could um, trigger goals, trigger engagement plan states or conditions. Um, for example, and just to clarify, explicit means that a customer is literally put in information about themselves. So they're filling in a form or they're taking some sort of direct action to fill in this or get into this engagement plan. Whereas implicit means that they've visited 5 pages about the Ford Mustang. So we know because of that they are probably looking to buy a product. So if we had some sort of engagement plan on the state of the buyer, such as the researcher, the buyer, and then the purchasee, somebody who has actually purchased the product. We could create an engagement plan for that. And because of these implicit views on the site, we could actually trigger or add them to the engagement plan depending on what state we believe they're in. So, obviously, if they were looking at 5 pages about Mustangs, they're not necessarily a buyer already. They're probably still in that research phase. So, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the engagement plan section. So underneath here, you'll see a lot of different options, but there is a section called engagement plans. And I've actually already created a folder called basic. Just it's good to kind of organize your engagement plans that you're creating. So I'm just going to add it underneath basic, and I'm just going to call this buyer. So I'm going to show a very simple example of a user or a site that has some sort of newsletter subscription form, a member, some sort of member registration area, and then they have some option inside that membership area to buy a product. Or even in this situation, at least specifically to this engagement plan, what I'm about to say doesn't apply, but if you had a buy option outside of the membership area and something that could be accessible, you might end up with a non-linear engagement plan where somebody could go directly from being a visitor to a buyer versus what I'm about to show you is somebody has to kind of flow from newsletter to member to buyer, one step after another. So just keep that in mind. So this, like I said, is just a very simple showcase of creating an engagement plan. I have a plan to create kind of a feature, like a case study per se, of a blog, and I'm going to show more specifically some of the engagement plans you could set up and marketing features you can set up to use with your blog, for example. So you're presented this interface. Just to explain real quick, I'm using Firefox for this. And if you're using Firefox 552 or above, you're going to have to go online and see how you can enable Silverlight. But Silverlight works with Firefox 52 and above or below quite easily, but there might be some configuration that you might have to do. You also have to make sure you have Silverlight actually installed. I've tried using IE to get this example to work, but it didn't seem to work too well. And lastly, Chrome doesn't support Silverlight whatsoever. So I'm hoping Sitecore eventually decides to stop supporting Silverlight because all the major browsers are starting to stop supporting it. So as a marketer, right now, to get this interface, to get Silverlight running, you have to be quite technical. And most marketers aren't. So I think it would be wise for Sitecore to stop supporting Silverlight and use some other method, like they've done with the path analyzer. They've kind of they used to be it used to be a Silverlight implementation. Now it's a it uses more HTML5 and JavaScript to achieve that functionality. So to get started, what we're going to do, one thing to note is that the engagement plan is not in the final workflow state. So engagement plans does use workflows. Just so that's something to keep in mind. So you can create multiple engagement plans and they won't go into production or be used until they've gone into that final workflow state. So just keep that in mind. But to begin, we'll click on design. And you'll notice that little loading thing. That's an indication that you're actually using Silverlight. So you have different areas here. The common things that you're going to create is different states. States are like a user has registered, a user has purchased something, things like that. They're actual states of where a user is at. A condition is more like a rule or a way to get from one state to another. So you could have a state of, well, let's go ahead and start creating these. We'll have a state called a subscriber. So if we double click this, we can say user has created or has subscribed to the newsletter. And we'll just call this a subscriber. So this is the initial state that a user comes into. So, and obviously a user wouldn't go into a subscriber by default. They have to fill in something. They have to trigger a goal or something has to happen to enter the state. So this would happen outside of this engagement plan, or you could possibly have another engagement plan that triggers this engagement plan. Maybe just a regular visitor engagement plan where you take them from miscellaneous views to more explicit views to subscriber, something like that, where they trigger this engagement plan. Also, you can trigger engagement plans from web forms for marketers. So if you had a subscriber form, you could just add somebody to an engagement plan from their subscription right off the bat. So I've seen where you have some sort of visitor state, but that's going to be full of so much data that it's really not all that useful. So the next thing is I'm going to create a new condition off of this. So you'll notice that there's these little prongs. So you could have multiple conditions. And then off of those conditions, you can have multiple, yes, no, maybe. Well, maybes are probably not likely, but you can have basically actions from that condition. So I have a condition. It's called subscriber. So I'm going to call this has subscribed. So I'm actually now taking a user from the subscription state to the member state or registration state. So has registered is what I will call this. This is a display name, so I can put it like that. I think it's good to put a question mark just because this is a condition And you'll see in a second why that really makes it easy to detect and understand the flow chart. So it's basically creating a flow chart behind the scenes. And I will just say, has the subscriber registered? And I'm going to say this always evaluates, but you have other options here. You can evaluate something on a timeout, which I'll show you those triggers in a second. Only evaluate for subscribed events. There's other options you can add. You can customize this. Obviously, everything is customizable. This rules engine I'm about to show you, you could extremely customize this. But I'm going to click on edit rule, and what I'm going to do is I created that goal previously. Well, actually, register actually already existed before I created this, but you have the ability to create goals, but you have the ability to then select that goal and say when that goal is triggered for a current user, then it goes and you can trigger and add that person to a different engagement plan state. There is a lot of options here. You can say when a certain date is passed, that user goes from state A to state B. You can do based off device. So you could say you could have some sort of engagement plan for types of users that use certain devices. You can do engagements automation, where you could say the current visitor is in any state in the specific engagement plan. So you could say that's a little odd one. I don't know where that would fit in. I guess if you had another engagement plan, you could get them into this engagement plan based off that logic, but I would think they would already be in a engagement plan at that point. Geoip. So if you have Geoip set up using the services by Sitecore, you can then determine if user is in a specific region or if they're in a longitude or latitude. That's kind of pretty rare. Of course, you could probably do a contains instead of compares to. You could do IP, you could do country, city, you could do area code, things like that. You could go with outcome, security, things like that. You can move it based off their user. So an example is when you register, you become a user. So this wouldn't apply, but you could. There's probably one for when the user. Well, there was where the current user is a member of a specific role. So if the user is part of your membership roles or whatever you have in place when they register, you could trigger this without having a goal, which I'm going to show in a second. There's system level things. These are kind of broad ones. There's tracking if enabled, venues, which is out of the scope of this. And then there's the visits, which I think is probably the most common one. You can do by engagement value points. So if you had your profile card set up and you were a user went to 5 pages and their value went up to a certain point, you can take them from one engagement plan or one engagement plan state to another. This is the one we're going to do where the specific goal was triggered during the current visit, but there's other options here. I just wanted to kind of show you can do it similar to the course I did on pattern cards and profile cards. This is the same thing. You can kind of trigger instead of personalization, you're going to trigger your engagement plans. And just to clarify what engagement plans are, since I didn't really cover that, they're just a way to watch and see users flow through your site. But you can also do things with that data. You can by knowing that maybe 80% of your users are registering, but they're never buying, you can then do things with that data. You can start personalizing content around users specifically in that engagement plan state to say, oh, well, if user is in engagement plan state member, which I'm going to create here in a second, then push them towards buying products. Or if you are in some sort of engagement plan where you have different levels of purchase, where you want to get a user from just a one-time purchase to a recurring purchase, you could push them towards that because you know which engagement plan they're in, and we're going to personalize based off that engagement plan. So there's a lot of other options here, literally everything you could ever think of. There's Visitor as well, and there's XDB. Also to note, this is all customizable. I will show a development side of this and at some point where I'm going to customize the rules engine. I'm probably going to do one on the bucket engine, but I'm also going to show one specifically for engagement plans in the future. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and select that one I was looking for. You can always search up here if you can't find what you're looking for as well. So yeah, so I'm going to select this one, and you can do different by clicking these links. You can do you can say accept, whereas, and so you can say if user isn't in this goal, then this would trigger that user to go from the first state of subscribe to member. That obviously wouldn't make sense for this, but yeah. So I'm going to say when the goal register is triggered, which I'm going to trigger. Let's say I had a what forms for marketers form, or if I had even a custom form where the developers had built in a goal that gets triggered. This is what I would do here. So where the register goal was triggered, I'm going to click OK, and then I'm just going to click OK. So now I have this condition here. So now you can start adding states off of this if you wanted to, or add additional conditions as well. You could chain conditions, a lot of conditions together if you wanted to. So actually you only have two options, a yes or a no option of a state. So you could have one state, has registered no, well then it would go there. Has registered yes, and you can specify, you'll see here when I click this option, it's going to say yes here. I believe I can customize that. That's complex. And now I have this condition. So this is going to be the member. So user has registered. And I'm going to say this is just a member state. And you can see they're linked still. And I will note that there's this concept of a trigger or an action between the states. So let's say I've gone to state, the condition is yes, and then I can actually add an action to this. I can add additional things. I can actually, I can send email to that user. So user has registered, send email. So that's another way. You don't necessarily have to build a form that sends an email. You can do this through the engagement plan. You can trigger an email. You can update values. You can move visitors to another state. For example, I can select that, and then I can click edit. Actually, before I do that, save. So I'm going to tell that, because it's a yes, I'm telling that user to trigger or move and take an action of moving that subscriber that's already in the that user that's in the subscriber state. I'm moving them to the member state. So now that that's done, we're gonna go ahead and now create another thing. I will note that you can also do triggers. Sorry, I get actions and triggers confused, but somebody that is in this this would trigger based off these kind of things. So so I'm going to just continue creating some more. So this one will be has the user or member at this point, member purchased an item. I'm going to say has purchased with a question mark. Just make that, and I'm gonna always evaluate this. I'm gonna show the way to turn or change timeout settings for different workflow states. So you could say only when it evaluates that timeout, then it triggers this condition. So here again, I'm gonna go and find a visitor specific goal. So I am going to say purchased. So that means that this user has just purchased something. So then I'm going to now go over here and it says add state, and I'm going to say yes, they have purchased something. So that means all those conditions equals true or yes, and then we can send this user to this state, which means the user has purchased an item. And I will just say this is a buyer state. And I will now customize. Let's go ahead and save that real quick. And then I will customize a new add, and I will edit. And I will say this move action to subscriber state. So now the user would go into the buy state. Like what I was mentioning before, I like to kind of space these out. This is like a very linear pattern because it's just one boom, 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 boom. Just yeses, no nos, no additional conditions. Has registered, yes. Oh, well, have they also filled in their phone number? Okay, do this, you know. That's where you would kind of line up additional conditions on top of each other. So the timeout is what I was speaking of, is you can say that this timeout date is 3 days, you know, so a user goes in the member state for 5 days, and then you could trigger additional conditions off of that. Okay, they've been there 5 days, trigger this condition. Have they, you know, been on the site? Okay, no, they haven't. Maybe you could trigger an email being sent out to them, things like that. So this isn't necessarily just a website thing. This could trigger, if you have other systems integrated with Sitecore, you could have engagement plans that are cross or omni-channel, as they say. So you could pull in social into this, you could pull in email, you could pull in maybe a call center if you had something like that. So you could trigger, and those rules that you define, this is where if you had a call center, for example, you could have some sort of API integration where, you know, if somebody in your call center has called that user, if they click some sort of button or something that signified that they have called that user, and at that time that triggers the system, it comes back to the Sitecore engagement plan and says, oh, well, that user was triggered. If user was triggered, then go into this additional engagement plan. So That's pretty much it for engagement plans. I'm just going to save this. There is a few other things I'll show you real quick. So now if you go back here, you'll see that it's still saying that it's not published, but I'll just click the item again. There's the ability to supervise, which is where you can add users to different states, things like that. So if you wanted to add a user or add things, you can zoom in, zoom out, things like that. There's a way to, and this also gives you kind of a preview of what is going on in your engagement plan. So if you had a lot of data in here, this really gives you a perspective of, you know, how people are navigating for your site. So if you have like 80% here and then 20% here and then only 10% here, actually that's not correct, 70% here, 20% and then 10%, which probably actually be pretty typical for a site like this, then you know that you should be marketing towards the subscribers to get them to members, and then once members, then try to get them to purchase or buy something on the site. And you can always export an image of this and things like that. Another option is to monitor. This is truly just to monitor your engagement plan. So that last interface, you could actually add things to your engagement plan, whereas this is truly just to watch. So let me go back to the supervise real quick, and you can see it's not showing me as an option to add. It might be because this is not in the final workflow state. So let me go ahead and just show how to move this into final workflow state. So if you click on the reviews tab and click deploy, then it will ask for a comment. I'm gonna leave it blank, and it will basically push or deploy this out to the web database, and now users can go into this. And now you can select on different options and add users to this. I can add a specific Sitecore user, for example. I could say my host URL or host user right here. I could just add them to the engagement plan. And now I'd refresh. Looks like the data is not refreshing, but it should be showing a percent. It should be showing 100% is in that initial state. But anyways, it doesn't matter. You can view your users. I guess for some reason that user didn't get added. You can add all members of a Sitecore role. So if you had a role that represented subscribers, you could, well, it'd probably be members, like more likely. You can add a segment. This kind of pulls in the contact management center of Sitecore. Remove all contacts, copy contacts, move contacts, etc. So yeah, that's pretty much it for engagement plans. If you have any questions about engagement plans, or you are trying to put one together and you find yourself lost, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me on my LinkedIn or you know, just leave a comment. I also have some links down in the description below of other ways you can contact me. Just feel free to do that. So, all right.